The Eurasian steppe during the Pleistocene was a landscape that seemed designed specifically for creatures like Elasmotherium. Vast, open grasslands stretched for thousands of miles. The silence surrounding the extinction of the Elasmotherium is genuinely haunting. For an animal that once defined the Ice Age landscape, its disappearance is perplexing. It makes the mammoth's survival story seem less like triumph and more like luck. This creature, built like a living battering ram, found paradise in the occasional river valleys and scattered patches of woodland. There were no dense forests to navigate, no steep terrains to negotiate, just endless expanses of territory where speed, power, and intimidation ruled supreme. What makes Elasmotherium's territorial dominance truly remarkable is that they weren't just surviving in these conditions. They were thriving in areas where other megafauna couldn't establish permanent populations. The frozen steppes of Siberia, the wind-swept plains of Kazakhstan, the harsh grasslands of Central Asia, these were Elasmotherium's hunting grounds. These were territories where the combination of extreme cold, sparse vegetation, and brutal competition eliminated most other large herbivores. The secret lay in their approach to resource management. While mammoth herds required vast areas to support their numbers, moving constantly to find sufficient food, Elasmotherium operated on a different principle entirely. They were territorial specialists, claiming specific ranges and defending them with the kind of aggressive efficiency that made migration unnecessary. That horn wasn't just a weapon. It was a property deed written in bone and enforced through violence. Consider the advantages this gave them during the harshest periods of the Ice Age. When food became scarce and competition intensified, mammoth herds had to keep moving, constantly searching for new feeding grounds while burning precious calories in the process. Elasmotherium simply cleared their territory of competitors and settled in for the long haul. They could access buried vegetation that other creatures couldn't reach, defend prime feeding areas that others couldn't claim, and maintain energy reserves that migration-dependent species couldn't match. The fossil record tells a story of creatures that weren't just surviving, they were prospering. Elasmotherium remains have been found across a range that stretched from Ukraine to Mongolia, a distribution that suggests not desperate wandering, but successful territorial expansion. These weren't refugees from climate change. They were the landlords of the Ice Age, collecting rent in the form of exclusive access to the best grazing areas. And unlike mammoth populations, which fluctuated dramatically with environmental changes, Elasmotherium populations remained relatively stable throughout their existence. This wasn't luck. It was the natural result of a survival strategy so effective that it made them nearly immune to the environmental press that devastated other megafauna. For a creature so perfectly adapted to Ice Age conditions, so dominant in its chosen environment, and so well equipped for survival, Elasmotherium's extinction presents one of paleontology's most perplexing mysteries. How do you eliminate something that appeared virtually indestructible? While mammoths managed to survive in various forms until roughly 4,000 years ago, with some populations persisting on isolated islands well into human civilization, Elasmotherium vanished from the fossil record around 39,000 years ago. This wasn't a gradual decline. It was a sudden, complete disappearance that left no descendants and precious few clues about what could have overwhelmed such a formidable creature. The conventional explanation points to climate change, but this theory has some serious problems. Elasmotherium had already survived multiple ice ages, numerous warming periods, and dramatic environmental shifts throughout its history. These were creatures that had proven themselves capable of adapting to changing conditions over millions of years. Why would this particular climate shift prove fatal when so many previous ones had been survived? Some researchers suggest human hunting prey, but again, the evidence doesn't quite add up. While humans were certainly present in Elasmotherium's range during the late Pleistocene, the idea that early human populations could have systematically eliminated creatures this large and dangerous seems optimistic at best. Remember, we're talking about 5-ton animals, armed with 6-heft horns and the temperament of a cornered badger. Even with primitive weapons, the cost-benefit analysis of hunting such creatures seems questionable. The most disturbing possibility is that Elasmotherium's very dominance contributed to its downfall. Their territorial nature, while advantageous during stable periods, may have prevented them from adapting to rapidly changing conditions. Unlike mammoths, which could migrate to more favorable areas, Elasmotherium populations may have been too committed to their territories to abandon them when conditions deteriorated. But here's the truly unsettling part. The disappearance was so complete that for centuries, scientists weren't even Elasmotherium had existed at all. Unlike mammoth remains, which are found regularly and in excellent condition, Elasmotherium fossils are rare and often fragmentary. It's almost as if something deliberately erased them from the archaeological record. Recent discoveries have added new layers to this mystery. Some fossils show evidence of stress markers and nutritional deficiencies that suggest the final populations were struggling with environmental press. Others display unusual growth patterns that might indicate disease or genetic problems. The picture emerging is of a species that didn't just disappear. It collapsed suddenly and catastrophically. Taken together, the evidence paints a grim picture. Whatever eliminated Elasmotherium was powerful enough to bring down a creature that had reigned unchallenged for ages, resilient, dominant, and built to endure. And yet, it vanished with barely a trace. Elasmotherium wasn't just another Ice Age animal, it redefined dominance. The mammoth may have gotten the fame, but Elasmotherium earned the title that mattered most, the real titan of the Ice Age. But Elasmotherium wasn't the only behemoth history forgot. Now, I want to tell you about another giant. Far to the south, another titan was the definition of giant altogether, bigger than a mammoth, heavier than a T-Rex, and possibly the largest land mammal to ever walk the earth. When we envision the world that shaped our earliest ancestors, I think we typically imagine a landscape dominated by predators. Saber-toothed cats stalking the savanna, massive hyenas lurking near water holes, and early humans huddled around fires for protection. But what if one of the most significant competitors our ancestors faced wasn't a carnivore at all, but another primate? One so massive it would tower over any human alive today. Meet Deinonychus inans, the terrible ape of Pleistocene Africa. It stood over 5 feet tall when upright and weighed up to 330 pounds. That's nearly 5 times heavier than today's largest baboons. These colossal primates shared the African landscape with Australopithecus, an early Homo species, between roughly 3 to 2 million years ago. Yet despite their imposing presence during this pivotal chapter of prehistory, they remain virtually unknown outside of specialized scientific circles. Dinopithecus belongs to the family Cercopithecidae, the Old World monkeys rather than the hominid family. Specifically, it's classified within the subfamily Papionini, alongside modern baboons, geladas, and mangabes. Despite this taxonomic distance from humans, Dinopithecus represents one of the most remarkable examples of primate gigantism in the fossil record. The genus first entered scientific literature in 1938, when paleontologist Robert Broom described Dinopithecus inans based on fossil remains from Sterkfontein near Pretoria, South Africa. The name itself tells a story. Dino, from the Greek, for terrible or fearfully great. Pithecus, meaning ape or monkey, and inans, meaning huge in Latin, a fitting title for a creature that pushed the boundaries of what we thought primates could become. Subsequent discoveries have primarily come from cave sites in South Africa, including Kromdraai and Cooper's Cave, locations famously associated with early hominin remains. Fossil evidence includes partial skulls, mandibles, and postcranial elements that allow paleontologists to reconstruct its appearance and lifestyle. Most fossils date between 3 and 2 million years ago, placing Dinopithecus firmly in the Pleistocene epoch alongside early Australopithecus and Homo species. Physically, Dinopithecus was a scaled-up baboon built for terrestrial power. Its skull alone made up to 30 semitarded males and featured an elongated muzzle, enlarged canines, and a prominent sagittal crest for anchoring massive jaw muscles, indicators of both feeding strength and male-male competition. The mandible was exceptionally robust, with a deep body adapted to handle powerful chewing forces far beyond what is seen in modern baboons. Dental analysis shows a heavy emphasis on grinding plant material. Large molars with thick enamel point to a diet that included fibrous vegetation, seeds, and tubers, foods that required prolonged mastication. These adaptations suggest Dinopithecus could exploit tough resources that smaller primates couldn't process efficiently, offering a survival edge in diverse or fluctuating environments. Still, for all that chewing power, it needed a body that could carry the weight, literally. Though fossilized postcranial remains are fragmentary, they leave no doubt. This was a ground dweller built like a fortress. The bones are dense, the muscle attachments oversized, and the proportions suggest a primate that moved low and heavy. It wasn't agile, but it didn't need to be. It was stable, durable, a four-limbed tank that could traverse both woodland and savanna. Now here's where the social structure gets fascinating. Sexual dimorphism in Dinopithecus was extreme, even more pronounced than in modern baboons. Males may have weighed up to twice as much as females and bore significantly larger canines and cranial crests. This suggests intense male competition, likely involving physical confrontations and dominance displays, a social structure where size directly translated to reproductive success. Yet all this leaves Dinopithecus somewhere in the middle of its ecosystem. Its size positioned it as a mesopredator, both hunter and hunted. It likely fed on fruits, seeds, roots, and small animals, while remaining vulnerable to apex predators like saber-toothed cats or large hyenas. Its bulk, strength, and potential for aggressive defense would have made it a formidable opponent, one that early hominins may have respected, avoided, or even competed with. Modern baboons are notoriously territorial, confrontational, and quick to violence when threatened, and Dinopithecus almost certainly took that to the extreme. With large, dominant males leading the charge, a threatened troop could have erupted into an explosion of noise, displays, and physical retaliation. Raised hackles, deafening vocalizations, and jaw-clapping would have been the first warning, but if that didn't work, those massive canines weren't just for show. A provoked Dinopithecus, especially a protective male, could have delivered devastating bites and powerful strikes capable of injuring or killing mid-sized predators. Some paleontologists estimate Dinopithecus could have delivered bite forces comparable to those of big cats, perhaps reaching or even exceeding 2,000 lb of crushing force. I sometimes imagine what it must have been like to face down a Dinopithecus, not just one but many. A defensive circle of 10 to 20 large primates, bristling with muscle and rage. It would have been quite a deterrent. These weren't creatures that backed down easily. They simply didn't need to. During the time when Dinopithecus thrived in South Africa, the climate was shifting significantly. For a primate of that exceptional size, these changes brought both challenges and opportunities. The forests gradually gave way to more open woodlands and grasslands, a transition that favored adaptable ground-dwelling species. Fossil sites suggest that Dinopithecus inhabited a mosaic landscape, a mix of open savanna, woodlands, and riverine forests, environments not unlike those preferred by modern baboons. Troop life for Dinopithecus probably mirrored that of modern baboons, but on a far more intimidating scale. These multi-male, multi-female groups were likely structured around rigid dominance hierarchies, with adult males asserting their rank through visual displays and, when necessary, brutal physical confrontations. Some of these males weighed up to 150 kilos. These clashes were anything but subtle. Adult males likely positioned themselves on the outskirts of the troop, forming a living barrier against potential predators. At dawn, the group would descend from cliffs or tall trees, safe havens used to avoid nocturnal hunters. From there, the day began with movement and, of course, lots of eating. Feeding likely consumed much of the daylight hours. Adult males may have needed up to 7 kilograms of plant matter daily, grasses, seeds, fruits, bulbs, tubers, all requiring tremendous chewing power. And while plants formed the base of their diet, they weren't strictly herbivores. Like their modern relatives, Dinopithecus likely supplemented their diet with animal protein, small vertebrates, insects, scavenged carcasses. But here's where it gets interesting. With their size and strength, they may have taken things further, preying on juvenile antelope or the young of larger animals. And when it came to disputed carcasses, their bulk alone may have been enough to intimidate other predators into backing off. Much like modern baboons, Dinopithecus likely relied on a rich set of vocalizations, facial cues, body postures, and physical contact. With brains scaled to their size and complex social structures to manage, their interactions were probably just as nuanced, broadcasting everything from individual rank to predator warnings with a glance or a grunt. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of Dinopithecus is its temporal and geographic overlap with early human species. Between approximately 3 and 2 million years ago, as Dinopithecus roamed the South African landscape, the hominin presence was undergoing a period of remarkable change. Species like Australopithecus were being joined by early Homo. Upright walking had become well established, brain sizes were growing, and the first stone tools were appearing. This was the crucible of humanity, and Dinopithecus was there to witness it. The fossil evidence places Dinopithecus in association with hominin remains at several critical sites. At Swartkrans and Cooper's Cave in South Africa's cradle of humankind, Dinopithecus fossils have been found in the same deposits as Australopithecus robustus and early Homo specimens. This wasn't just proximity across a landscape. These primates inhabited the same immediate environments, drank from the same water sources, sheltered in the same cave systems, and likely observed each other regularly. The size disparity alone would have created a power imbalance. Early hominins stood approximately 1.2 to 1.5 meters tall and weighed between 30 and 55 kilograms. They would have been significantly outmatched by adult male Dinopithecus, which averaged around 80 kilograms, with larger individuals reaching up to 150 kilograms. Armed with formidable canines and superior upper body strength, even the smaller female Dinopithecus would have presented a physical threat. Competition for resources was inevitable. Both groups were omnivorous, with overlapping dietary preferences, though with different specializations. Early hominins were developing adaptations for a more versatile diet, including meat obtained through scavenging and possibly hunting, while Dinopithecus likely specialized in efficiently processing large quantities of plant materials. Nevertheless, both would have sought out the same high-value food resources, fruits, nuts, tubers, and water sources, creating potential conflict points. And it wasn't just diet that brought them into contact. Both groups favored mosaic environments, offering a mix of woodlands for shelter and open areas for foraging. Both likely needed trees or cliff faces for nighttime safety from predators. Both would have been drawn to reliable water sources, particularly during dry seasons. This shared preference for similar habitats would have end regular encounters between the species. The responses of early hominins to Dinopithecus were likely complex and situational. Direct competition was probably avoided when possible, with hominins developing greater behavioral flexibility to compensate for their physical disadvantage. This might have included adjusting activity patterns to avoid peak Dinopithecus feeding times, developing more efficient foraging strategies, or utilizing tools to access food resources unavailable to even the powerful Dinopithecus. One intriguing possibility is that the presence of Dinopithecus may have accelerated hominin tool use and cooperation. When confronted with larger, more physically imposing competitors, our ancestors, the landscape our early ancestors shared wasn't just filled with potential, it was filled with danger. Imagine facing not only climate change, but also mega-monkeys, massive carnivores, and the constant struggle for resources. It's a wonder anyone survived. I often think about Dinopithecus, a large, aggressive primate that once roamed alongside early hominins. Their very presence might have offered us some protection, a deterrent to predators wary of tangling with a troop of powerful males. Or, conversely, perhaps a small group of hominins inadvertently attracted unwanted attention, drawing predators toward the Dinopithecus as well. These interactions, the dance of predator and prey, the competition for dwindling resources, all played a part in the eventual disappearance of Dinopithecus around 1.6 million years ago. Climate change, the expansion of grasslands, and the shrinking of woodlands disrupted their food supply and shelter. Smaller, more adaptable baboons proved to be formidable competitors. And then, the rise of Homo erectus brought even greater challenges, more advanced tools, broader diets, and overlapping ecological needs, leading to intensified resource competition. The extinction of Dinopithecus, slow and gradual under mounting press, echoes a broader trend of large-bodied species disappearing during that era. It reminds me of another creature, one known in ancient Greece as Enoxian dirus, the terrible wolf. We know it better as the dire wolf. It was said to be so dominant, so ferocious, that even the largest prehistoric animals lived in fear. With jaws that could tear through the flesh and bones of a mammoth, it struck fear into the hearts of all who crossed its path. These apex predators were renowned for their meat-centric diet and intimidating hunting skills. Their dental features, their short intestines optimized for processing meat, their robust skeletons and powerful limbs, everything about them spoke of strength and prowess. Their bite force was among the strongest of any canid, enabling them to take down formidable prey with remarkable efficiency. Dire wolves prowled across diverse landscapes, from the plains of North America to the arid savannas of South America and the steppes of Eastern Asia. In North America, they hunted bison, horses, and large ground sloths. In South America, their prey included ground sloths, glyptodons, toxodons, mastodons, and extinct camels. In Eastern Asia, they faced formidable opponents like woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, steppe bison, and wild horses. They faced competition from other predators, the American lion, the giant short-faced bear. At La Brea, they clashed with predators and scavengers amidst trapped herbivores, outnumbering gray wolves 5-1. Living in monogamous pairs and hunting in packs, dire wolves displayed fierce determination and adaptability. But where did they come from? The origin of the dire wolf has sparked debate among scientists. One theory suggests that they arose from an expansion of the genus Canis from Eurasia. Another proposes that they emerged from an ancestral lineage native to the Americas, distinct from Canis. For years, scientists tried to extract DNA from dire wolf fossils, but tar residue stubbornly clung to the bone material. Finally, in 2021, they got their hands on nuclear DNA. The discoveries revealed that dire wolves represent a unique genetic lineage that split from wolf-like canines a staggering 5.7 million years ago, supporting the theory of an ancestral lineage native to the Americas. Despite the similarity in their skeletal structures, dire wolves and gray wolves are not closely related. This is attributed to convergent evolution, where different species develop similar traits independently. The dire wolf stands out as a unique species within the canine world, distinct from modern gray wolves. The story of the dire wolf spans an impressive 40 million years. It began with the arrival of the canid family in North America. I find it fascinating how this family tree branched out. From the fox-like vulpini to the dog-like canini, each showcasing unique variations. Dire wolf fossils have been found in such diverse habitats: plains, grasslands, forested mountain areas, even arid savannas across both North and South America. The La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles and the Tula Springs in Nevada are particularly abundant in fossils. It's interesting to note that while dire wolf remains are less common at higher latitudes in North America, recent discoveries of Asian dire wolf fossils challenge previous theories about their range. Fossils have been reported in various states with major sites east of the Rocky Mountains. They've also been uncovered in Mexico, particularly in the San Jose Cave and El Cedazo. And in South America, specimens dated to less than 17,000 years ago have been found in Venezuela, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Ecuador. The discovery of a dire wolf fossil in northeastern China in 2020 suggests a migration route. It seems they traveled from mid-latitude North America across Beringia into Eurasia, which challenges previous assumptions about barriers to their dispersal. I often wonder what that journey must have been like. Understanding the physical characteristics of dire wolves really sheds light on their adaptations and behaviors. They were similar in proportion to modern North American wolves, like the Yukon wolf, but with variations in size and morphology. Some specimens from Rancho La Brea were smaller than the largest northern wolves we see today, while others were larger. Compared to modern wolves of similar body size, the dire wolf had smaller feet and a larger head. That massive skull, it was characterized by broader dimensions and a higher sagittal crest. There were also geographic differences, with specimens from California and Mexico showing distinct craniodental features and limb proportions compared to those from east of the Continental Divide. Some had shorter, lighter limbs, making them less adapted for running than timber wolves and coyotes. Others possessed longer limbs, comparable to the Yukon wolf. 125,000 years ago, dire wolves roamed the earth when the sea level was significantly higher than it is today. Then came the Wisconsin Glacial period, lasting from 80,000 to 20,000 years ago, the Ice Age. The dire wolves went extinct 9,500 years ago, marking the end of their era. Research suggests that dire wolves evolved separately from modern North American gray wolves and coyotes, with no genetic mixing. The reasons for their extinction remain debated. It likely involved a combination of factors: climate change, competition with other predators, and changes in prey availability. The disappearance of dire wolves marked the end of a unique lineage within the Canidae family, potentially altering predator-prey dynamics. Between 125,000 and 9,500 years ago, significant climatic shifts occurred, shaping the environment in which dire wolves lived. These changes, alongside fluctuations in prey populations, likely influenced their survival. They existed in diverse habitats, from grasslands to forests, adapting to various environmental conditions. As apex predators, they played a crucial role in regulating ecosystems, impacting the populations of herbivores and smaller predators. Their extinction represented a loss of biodiversity, disrupting ecological balances established over millennia. While interbreeding is known among wolf-like canines, studies haven't found evidence of genetic mixing between dire wolves and extant North American gray wolves or coyotes, suggesting independent evolution. The exact reasons for their extinction remain a subject of debate, with climate change, competition, and changes in prey, likely all playing a role. When I reflect on the era of the dire wolf, its formidable presence and powerful bite force really capture my imagination. But as the curtain fell on the age of reptiles, it gave way to an unexpected sequel, one where the supporting characters stepped into the spotlight. Enter the forest wrasses, more commonly known as the terror birds. These feathered nightmares emerged from the ashes of the dinosaur extinction, carrying the torch of their terrifying predecessors. Roughly 53 million years ago, in the early Eocene, the world was a very different place. A hothouse Earth with lush forests stretching from pole to pole, filled with a diverse range of life forms that emerged after the extinction of the dinosaurs. It was in this steamy, prehistoric paradise that the first terror bird, Paleopsilopterus, made its debut. Standing at a modest height of 1 meter, this Brazilian bird might not have seemed particularly terrifying at first glance. It was about the same size as a modern-day stork. But appearances can be deceiving. Paleopsilopterus had something its contemporaries lacked: potential. What set it apart was its agility and speed, traits that would become hallmarks of its descendants. While it may not have been the apex predator of its time, dwarfed by monstrous crocodilians and giant snakes, it was a harbinger of things to come. It's almost impossible to imagine now, but South America once witnessed the birth of a dynasty that would reign for millions of years: the terror birds. Nature, it seemed, had grand plans for this lineage, and those plans involved getting bigger, much bigger. Just 3 million years after Paleopsilus took its first steps, Eleuthernis emerged, a terror bird 50% taller than its ancestor, a truly formidable predator. Eleuthernis wasn't content with mere size. It also expanded its range in a way that no other terror bird would match. While most stayed in the Americas, Eleuthernis ventured across the sea to Europe. Fossil remains have been found in France and Switzerland, making it the only one known to have lived outside the New World. I can only imagine the surprise of early European mammals when this exotic predator appeared, bringing a taste of South American terror to the Old World. But Eleuthernis was just the beginning. As the epochs rolled by, the terror birds continued to grow, adapt, and diversify. It was as if they were in a relentless competition with themselves, each new species trying to outdo its predecessors in size and ferocity. The Oligocene epoch, from about 34 to 23 million years ago, marked a turning point. It was during this time that the family truly began to live up to its name, with the emergence of giants that would have given pause to even the bravest prey, the Paraphosaurus. This Brazilian bird was an absolute behemoth, standing 1.4 meters tall and weighing a whopping 180 kilograms. To put that into perspective, Paraphosaurus outweighed the largest living bird today, the ostrich. This was no lightweight contender. It was built like a feathered tank with robust bones that spoke of raw power. Paleontologists believe that Paraphosaurus hunted using kicks, slashes, and powerful jabs with its sharp beak. It's a hunting style that might remind one of a prehistoric version of mixed martial arts. This undefeated heavyweight champion wasn't just a mindless brute. Like many of its terror bird kin, it likely possessed a level of intelligence that set it apart. Studies of terror bird brain cases suggest they had well-developed visual and auditory centers, indicating keen senses that would have made them formidable hunters. As impressive as Paraphosaurus was, it was merely setting the stage for what was to come. As we step into the Miocene and Pliocene epochs, spanning from about 23 to 2.5 million years ago, we encounter the true giants of the terror bird family. These were creatures that pushed the boundaries of what it meant to be a bird, reaching sizes that rivaled the predatory dinosaurs of old. Three names stand out in this pantheon of avian terrors: Titanus, Kelenken, and Brontornis. Each of these genera represents the pinnacle of the terror bird lineage, and each had its own claim to fame. Titanus, the youngest and smallest of the trio, was also the most adventurous. While most terror birds were content to dominate South America, Titanus had grander ambitions. It crossed the newly formed land bridge connecting North and South America during the Great American Interchange, becoming the only large South American predator to successfully establish itself in North America. Unlike most of its relatives, this bird lived in what is now the United States, including Texas, Florida, and California. Standing 2 meters tall, Titanus would have been an imposing sight for the mammals of North America. Imagine the shock of a Pleistocene horse or ground sloth, accustomed to saber-toothed cats and dire wolves, suddenly confronted by this alien predator, half bird, half nightmare. But as impressive as Titanus was, it was dwarfed by its cousins back in South America. Kelenken, named after a mythological Tehuelche spirit, stood a towering 3 meters tall and weighed around 250 kilograms. This was a bird the size of a grizzly bear, with a head larger than that of a horse and a beak that could crush bone. Speaking of its head, recent studies have shown that Kelenken and other large terror birds possessed a unique skull structure that set them apart. Known as the terror bird skull type, this adaptation gave them increased bite force and pecking power. This suggests that these giants may have been capable of taking down larger prey than previously thought, potentially including some of the megafauna that roamed South America during their reign. The title of the largest terror bird is still debated, with Brontornis giving Kelenken a run for its money. While slightly shorter at 2.8 meters, Brontornis was built like a feathered bulldozer, potentially weighing up to 400 kilograms. This made it not just the heaviest terror bird, but also the heaviest carnivorous bird of all time, and the 4th heaviest bird overall. Interestingly, Brontornis has been the subject of scientific controversy. Some paleontologists have questioned whether it was truly a terror bird or even a carnivore at all, citing similarities in its toe claws to those of herbivorous birds. However, recent studies have identified features in Brontornis's vertebrae that are unique to terror birds, lending weight to its classification as a member of this fearsome family. Whether Brontornis was a terror bird or not, its massive size would have made it a force to be reckoned with. Its weight likely made it slower than its more nimble cousins, but what it lacked in speed, it made up for in raw power. I imagine Brontornis as the tank of the terror bird world. I've always been captivated by the idea of a bird so terrifying, so powerful, that it could dominate an entire world. The terror birds, these weren't just oversized chickens. They were apex predators capable of steamrolling over any prey unfortunate enough to cross their path. While some, like Kelenken and Brontornis, relied on sheer size and power, many others developed a different, equally effective strategy: speed. In the terror bird playbook, it seems, speed was just as important as size. Studies of their leg bones reveal a structure remarkably similar to that of modern-day ostriches, with short thigh bones paired with elongated lower leg and foot bones. This is a clear sign of high-speed running ability. Paleontologists estimate that many terror birds, including some of the larger species like Titanus, could have reached speeds exceeding 30 mph, or 48 km. That's faster than Usain Bolt, while standing twice as tall and weighing several times as much. But speed wasn't just about chasing down prey. For many terror birds, especially the smaller and medium-sized species, it was also a crucial defensive adaptation. In a world filled with other large predators, including giant carnivorous mammals and enormous crocodilians, the ability to make a quick getaway could mean the difference between life and death. This combination of speed and size made terror birds versatile predators, capable of adapting to a variety of hunting strategies. Smaller, faster species might have specialized in chasing down swift prey like small mammals and reptiles, while the larger, more powerful species could have employed ambush tactics or even taken on larger, more dangerous quarry. While their imposing size and fearsome beaks often steal the spotlight, the true power of terror birds lay in their highly developed senses. Recent studies of terror bird skulls and brain cases have revealed that these prehistoric predators were equipped with sensory capabilities that put them leagues ahead of many of their contemporaries. While terror birds might not have had eyesight quite as sharp as modern raptors like eagles or hawks, they were far from being visually impaired. Their eyes were well developed and positioned to provide excellent depth perception, a crucial advantage for any predator. But what really set terror bird vision apart was its versatility. These birds were equally adept at seeing in bright daylight and in the dim light of dawn and dusk, making them effective hunters around the clock. As for their hearing, the inner ear structure of terror birds suggests an acute sensitivity to low-frequency sounds. This ability would have allowed them to detect the footsteps and movements of potential prey, even when hidden by dense vegetation. Imagine a terror bird standing motionless in the prehistoric forests of South America, its head cocked slightly to one side. To a casual observer, it might appear to be resting or even dozing. But in reality, every fiber of its being is alert, its incredibly sensitive ears picking up the faintest rustle of leaves or the softest patter of tiny feet. In an instant, it can pinpoint the location of its unsuspecting prey and launch into action. This combination of visual and auditory prowess made terror birds the complete predatory package. It's no wonder these birds were able to dominate their ecosystems for millions of years. But even the mightiest rulers faced their downfall, and the reign of the terror birds was no exception. For millions of years, these avian predators had ruled supreme in South America, developing into a diverse array of species that filled various ecological niches. But somewhere along the line, their luck ran out. Traditionally, the extinction of the terror birds was linked to the Great American Interchange, a major paleozoographic event that occurred about 2.7 million years ago. This event saw the formation of the Isthmus of Panama, creating a land bridge between North and South America. As a result, animals from both continents were able to migrate across this newly formed connection, leading to a significant reshuffling of fauna. The conventional wisdom held that the influx of new predators from North America, including cats, dogs, and bears, outcompeted the terror birds, leading to their eventual extinction. It was a neat and tidy explanation that seemed to make perfect sense. However, as is often the case in science, the truth has turned out to be more complex and nuanced. Recent studies have cast doubt on this simple competition-based extinction model, revealing a more intricate tapestry of factors that led to the terror bird's downfall. One of the primary challenges to the competition hypothesis comes from a closer examination of the fossil record. It turns out that most terror birds, along with many of their main South American competitors, had already disappeared long before placental predators arrived in South America in significant numbers. This timing mismatch suggests that something else was at play. Moreover, the success of Titanus in North America serves as a counterpoint to the idea that terror birds couldn't compete with placental mammals. Not only did Titanus successfully expand its range northward during the interchange, but it also managed to coexist with large canids and felines for millions of years. Clearly, at least some terror birds were more than capable of holding their own against mammalian predators. So, if competition alone didn't doom the terror birds, what did? The answer, as is often the case in paleontology, likely involves a complex interplay of factors. Climate change in particular may have played a significant role. From the Oligocene to the Pliocene, Earth's climate was on a long-term cooling trend, culminating in a series of ice ages. This global cooling would have had a profound impact on the ecosystems that terror birds called home. As temperatures dropped and habitats changed, the lush forests that many terror bird species relied on would have given way to more open environments. The terror birds. I find myself thinking about them often. These feathered giants battled to survive in a world that was constantly changing. For years, we thought they vanished around 1 million years ago, but recent fossil discoveries have dramatically changed that timeline. Some smaller species persisted until just 96,000 years ago. And even more amazing is the potential discovery of terror bird fossils dating back a mere 18,000 years. If that's true, they survived almost until humans arrived in South America, roughly 15,000 years ago. It makes me wonder how close our ancestors came to encountering these creatures. What would that meeting have been like? Could the legends of giant birds in South American folklore hold a sliver of truth? It's unlikely there were direct encounters, but the thought that stories of these birds might have been passed down through generations isn't entirely impossible. After all, other megafauna that lived alongside early humans, like woolly mammoths and giant ground sloths, left their mark on our culture and myths. This near miss between humans and terror birds is a powerful reminder of the incredible diversity of life that once existed. It's sobering to think that if they had held on for just a few thousand more years, our understanding of the natural world could be so different. Thinking about apex predators brings another giant to mind, the Tyrannosaurus rex. In the forests of the past, it struck terror into anything that crossed its path. Even today, its reputation as the most frightening being to walk the planet endures. But just how terrifying was the T-Rex really? The first fragment of a T-Rex skeleton was discovered in Montana in 1902 by paleontologist Barnum Brown. That find sparked a new era of dinosaur research. Since then, major finds, like the nearly complete specimen Sioux, have given us invaluable insights into the morphology, behavior, and scientific importance of Tyrannosaurus rex. Through careful excavation, evaluation, and reconstruction, researchers have pieced together the story of this giant predator, a prominent apex predator throughout the late Cretaceous period. T-Rex and other large theropod dinosaurs like Tarbosaurus and Daspeltosaurus are classified as members of the subfamily Tyrannosaurini within the family Tyrannosauridae. Tyrannosaurus rex, one of the last and most widely recognized tyrannosaurid species, reigned as the top predator of the late Cretaceous era and a key figure in dinosaur evolution. Imagine a muscular body stretching up to 12 meters, almost the length of a school bus, from its snout to the tip of its tail. Some paleontologists even speculate that certain specimens may have exceeded 13 meters, dwarfing any other land predator of the time. And it wasn't just its length. This imposing giant stood as tall as 6 meters at the hips. An enormous creature with powerful legs supporting its massive frame, its head held high as it surveyed its realm with a regal authority. Estimates suggest a T-Rex could weigh anywhere from 12 to 18 tons, with its skin and flesh covering its massive bones. That's like several small cars compressed into one awe-inspiring predator, a true testament to the sheer power and bulk of this ancient apex predator. The Tyrannosaurus rex boasted a sturdy skeletal structure with a distinct vertebral column comprised of neck, back, and sacral vertebrae. Though the exact number of tail vertebrae varied, its neck formed a muscular S-shaped curve supporting its massive head, while pneumatic depressions and robust neural spines provided strength and flexibility. The forelimbs were short, with 2 clawed fingers contrasting the long hind limbs, contributing to its imposing stature. The pelvis featured a lengthy ilium and a large pubic boot, while the hind foot had an arctometatarsalien metatarsus. Throughout its skeleton, many bones were hollowed, reducing weight without sacrificing strength, which is crucial for supporting its bulk. The Tyrannosaurus rex, renowned for its massive size and impressive strength, possessed skulls reaching up to 1.54 meters in length. That's about the size of an adult human. These skulls, I've always been fascinated by the Tyrannosaurus rex's skull, not just its size, but the way it was engineered. Those skulls featured large fenestrae, reducing weight, while showcasing unique adaptations, such as an extremely wide rear and a narrow snout, ensuring exceptional binocular vision. The skull was composed of massive yet fused bones, with pneumatized components. All of this contributed to the tyrannosaurid trend of a powerful bite, surpassing that of non-tyrannosaurids. The upper jaw's U-shaped tip allowed for the extraction of more tissue and bone with each bite, though it heightened stress on the front teeth. The teeth in the upper jaw of Tyrannosaurus rex exhibited prominent ridges and tips that curled backward like cut tools, showing its distinct heterodonty, while the remaining teeth, robust and spaced, resembled lethal bananas. In mature individuals, The upper jaw housed larger teeth than the lower jaw, with the largest tooth discovered measuring 30.5 centimeters in length. Numerous small openings were observed in both the upper and lower jaws, suggesting potential sensory functions or indications of external structures. Of course, despite Tyrannosaurus rex's reputation for its massive jaws and teeth, it's impossible to overlook its disproportionately small arms. For a long time, they were considered useless. Yet some speculation indicates its small arms were not useless remains, but deadly weapons used in hand-to-hand combat. Paleontologist Stephen Stanley suggests that they were used as lethal weapons. With a length of just 3 feet, they had crescent-shaped claws that were sharpened to a razor edge, capable of causing deadly injuries to unsuspecting prey. I picture the moment when the T-Rex advances towards its target with its huge head hanging above, while its strong front limbs make rapid slashing movements, cutting through tissue and muscles with frightening accuracy. This paints a different picture of how the T-Rex hunted, showing its skill in quickly and effectively immobilizing its prey. Once thought to be useless structures, like wisdom teeth in humans or wings in flightless birds, the T-Rex's arms are now recognized as crucial weapons in its hunting tactics, adding to the fear of this prehistoric dominant predator. The portrayal of Tyrannosaurus rex in Jurassic Park movies emphasizes its poor eyesight, as characters often evade its notice by remaining still. However, recent scientific findings suggest otherwise. Paleontologists, drawing upon comparative anatomy and fossil evidence, theorize that the T-Rex likely had vision like contemporary predators like hawks, with the ability to detect both moving and stationary objects. This challenges its cinematic depiction and deepens our understanding of its sensory capabilities. Another perspective suggests the T-Rex was an adept ambush predator, utilizing its size, powerful jaws, and heightened senses to swiftly hunt prey. Conversely, some view it as a scavenger, feeding on carrion or scavenging from carcasses. These differing views underscore the complexity of the T-Rex's behavior and ecological role, fueling ongoing debates among researchers. Along with its extraordinary eyesight, the Tyrannosaurus rex possessed a remarkable sense of smell, akin to vultures today. This keen olfactory ability allowed it to spot objects up to 6 kilometers away under ideal conditions. In addition to its sharp senses, the T-Rex excelled at hunting due to its quick speed. Able to detect prey from a distance, it could pursue its targets at speeds reaching 25 miles per hour, a pace comparable to the world record sprinting speed of Usain Bolt. Imagine yourself wandering in a primeval environment, trying to navigate back to safety with the noises of the woods echoing in the background. Suddenly, a tremendous noise halts you in your tracks. The Tyrannosaurus rex is approaching, causing your heart to race. Desperately trying to escape the advancing creature, you sprint frantically, your feet pounding on the forest floor, yet you feel the earth tremble under your feet as the T-Rex closes in. Glancing back, you see its massive silhouette with gleaming sharp teeth under the sun's rays. Realizing to no escape, the T-Rex's jaws close on you with incredible force. 50 to 60 teeth, each as big as a banana, pierce your skin simultaneously, sending waves of agony through your body. In that horrifying moment, you experience the true terror of being hunted by the most formidable predator to ever roam the earth. The feeding and diet of the Tyrannosaurus rex were integral to its dominance as a top predator during the late Cretaceous period. With its massive size and powerful jaws filled with serrated teeth, T-Rex was a formidable carnivore. Its diet primarily consisted of large, herbivorous dinosaurs such as Triceratops and Ankylosaurus, which were among the toughest dinosaurs of their time and were preyed upon by T-Rex. Additionally, at times, T-Rex would also prey upon other large carnivorous dinosaurs, showcasing its fearsome predatory prowess. For example, it's believed that T-Rex may have occasionally targeted individuals of its own kind or even formidable predators, demonstrating the sheer dominance and terror of this apex predator. The Tyrannosaurus rex had a significant impact on its surroundings beyond its role as an efficient hunter. Its presence necessitated changes in the behavior of other animals. Some dinosaurs developed defenses such as speed or armor to evade its attacks, while others sought refuge in dense forests or migrated to new areas. As the dominant predator, T-Rex reshaped prey distribution and population dynamics, influencing ecological balance and predator-prey relationships. The Tyrannosaurus rex shared its environment with a diverse array of other dinosaurs, each possessing unique adaptations and behaviors. Among these were Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, Stegosaurus, Torosaurus, Albertosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, Dinosaurus, Ornithomimus, and Anzu. The T-Rex's formidable presence, characterized by its size and predatory prowess, undoubtedly influenced the lives and evolutionary trajectories of these coexisting species. Forget the horned helmets and storm-tossed seas. I'm far more interested in what the Vikings faced beyond the waves. Colossal creatures seemingly ripped from legend, giants of a dying world. I've always been fascinated by the idea that the Vikings didn't just conquer lands, they battled nature itself. These clashes were so intense they became legends whispered for centuries. The first beast our Norse ancestors regularly encountered was the magnificent aurochs, wild cattle unlike anything alive today. Standing 6 feet at the shoulder, these weren't your typical farm animals. A full-grown aurochs bull could weigh over 2,000 pounds, with a muscular frame that dwarfed even the largest modern cattle breeds. What I find truly intimidating were their enormous horns, curved weapons that could span over 3 feet from tip to tip. These weren't defensive tools, they were perfectly designed killing instruments. The forward-facing orientation allowed bulls to charge directly at threats with enough force to impale a fully armored warrior or even flip a small boat. It's incredible to think that aurochs' horns were often kept as trophies after successful hunts, becoming drinking vessels for the most prestigious Viking warriors. The relationship between Vikings and aurochs was more than just survival. It was woven into their very culture, leaving a mark on Norse art, symbolism, and even the warrior mindset. Hunting these beasts was a true test of courage for young Norse warriors. Unlike modern hunting, where distance and firearms provide safety, Viking hunters had to approach within spear-throwing range, close enough to smell the animal's breath. A charging aurochs could reach speeds of 22 miles per hour, leaving hunters with mere seconds to make their throw or face the consequences. Many Norse graves contain evidence of horn wounds, silent testimony to hunts gone wrong. By the Viking Age, Aurochs populations were already declining across Europe due to habitat loss and hunting preyers. The last known aurochs died in 1627 in Poland's Jaktora forest, long after the Viking era had ended. But the land wasn't the only domain where Vikings encountered magnificent creatures that have since vanished. The seas that formed their highways held their own vanished giants. If you sailed with Vikings across the North Atlantic, you would have witnessed an extraordinary sight along rocky coastlines, colonies of thousands of black and white birds standing upright like tiny sentinels. The great auk, often called the original penguin, bore a striking resemblance to its southern hemisphere counterparts, despite having no direct relation. Standing about 2.5 feet tall, these flightless birds were perfectly adapted to the cold waters of the North Atlantic. Their wings had transformed into powerful flippers that propelled them through the ocean with remarkable speed. I read somewhere that they could fly underwater at up to 22 miles per hour. On land, however, they were awkwardly vulnerable, waddling upright on 2 legs, unable to take flight when danger approached. For Vikings, the great auk represented an almost absurdly convenient resource. Unlike most prey that required chasing, these birds couldn't flee effectively on land. Norse seafarers could simply walk among nesting colonies and select their victims. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements in Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands reveals vast quantities of great auk bones and kitchen middens, often showing cut marks consistent with meat removal. The great auk's waterproof feathers were prized for insulation and bedding. Its fat provided lamp oil, and its beaks became decorative items. A Viking burial in Norway even featured a necklace with 5 great auk beaks, hinting at both symbolic and practical value. Ironically, the bird's marine adaptations made it vulnerable, breeding only on a few remote islands, laying a single egg on rocky ground. By the Viking Age, human hunting had already forced some colonies to vanish. The great auk's final extinction didn't occur until 1844, when the last confirmed pair was killed on the island of Elde off Iceland. A sad epilogue to a relationship that began when the first Norse ships reached their breeding grounds. The birds that had once numbered in the millions, forming colonies so vast they darkened shorelines, vanished because they had no natural defense against human predation. While Vikings ventured across vast oceans, the forests that surrounded their settlements held creatures just as remarkable and far more dangerous. Among these was a distinct forest giant that many researchers now believe represented a specialized hybrid population, the European forest elk, or skogelg, a creature that combined characteristics of what we now classify as separate moose and elk species. Standing up to 7 feet at the shoulder with magnificent palmate antlers spanning up to 6 feet across, these forest giants were truly imposing. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements reveals distinctive antler configurations unlike modern European moose populations, suggesting these animals represented a unique genetic lineage that has since disappeared through hunting preyers and hybridization with other cervid populations. What made these forest elk particularly remarkable was their coloration and behavior. Unlike modern moose, with their uniformly dark coats, I've always been fascinated by the animals that shaped human history, sometimes in ways we barely recognize. Consider the forest elk of Scandinavia. Cave paintings suggest these massive deer had distinctive light patches on their sides and shoulders. This created a mottled appearance, offering excellent camouflage in the dappled forest light. These weren't the docile creatures we might imagine today. Their behavior was reportedly more aggressive than modern moose, especially during the rooting season. Bulls actively defended their territories, not just competing for females. For Viking communities, these elk were essential. A single animal could provide over 500 kilo, that's 100 pounds, of meat, enough to feed a small village for weeks during the harsh northern winters. Their hides, tougher and more durable than domestic cattle leather, were prized for shields, boats, and winter clothing. And perhaps most valued were their enormous antlers, which Viking craftsmen transformed into everything from tools and weapons to drinking horns for isles and kings. But by the late Viking Age, these distinctive forest elk populations were already showing signs of decline. The combination of intensive hunting and forest clearing for agriculture fragmented their habitat across Scandinavia. As Viking settlements expanded, encounters with these magnificent beasts became increasingly rare. Medieval sources describe them as creatures of the remote wilderness, rather than animals regularly seen near human habitation. As impressive as these forest giants were, they weren't the only creatures shaping Viking survival. Deep within Scandinavia's icy rivers swam another unexpected powerhouse, one that proved just as valuable and equally dangerous. While spotting a whale today feels like a rare and wondrous sight, for Viking sailors, such encounters often turned into high-stakes battles. Gray whales were a valuable prize, offering meat, oil, and bone, but hunting them meant rowing dangerously close, where a single thrash of the whale's tail could shatter a long ship and send its crew to a cold, watery grave. Unlike most whale species that still inhabit northern seas today, the Atlantic gray whale population was driven to complete extinction by the 18th century. During the Viking Age, however, these magnificent marine mammals were abundant, particularly in coastal waters, where their distinctive feeding behavior made them both visible and vulnerable. Atlantic gray whales reached lengths of 14 to 15 meters or 46 to 49 feet, comparable to modern gray whales in the Pacific. They weighed up to 36 tons. This made them roughly the size of a Viking longship, a comparison that wouldn't have been lost on Norse seafarers. Their mottled gray coloration, often covered with barnacles and whale lice, gave them a distinctive appearance that featured in Norse daeons of sea creatures. What made gray whales unique among the cetaceans Vikings encountered was their feeding strategy. Unlike deep-diving species, gray whales were bottom feeders that plowed the sea floor for small invertebrates, creating massive mud plumes visible from the surface. This habit brought them into shallow coastal waters, precisely where Viking ships operated most frequently. For Norse communities, gray whales represented an extraordinary bounty when successfully hunted. A single whale could yield up to 20 tons of meat and blubber, enough to feed an entire Viking settlement through the harsh northern winter. Archaeological evidence from coastal North settlements shows specialized bone tools designed specifically for processing whale meat alongside huge cooking pits that could only have been used for creatures of this size. The hunting of gray whales wasn't without peril. Unlike passive species such as the right whale, gray whales were known for their aggressive defense when threatened. They would often charge attacking boats, using their massive flukes to smash wooden vessels to splinters. Norse sagas contain accounts of whaling expeditions ending in disaster when cornered whales fought back, earning them the nickname devilfish among later whalers. What made Atlantic gray whales particularly vulnerable to hunting was their predictable migration patterns and coastal breeding grounds. Each year, they would travel along well-established routes between feeding areas in the north and calving grounds further south. Vikings, with their intimate knowledge of coastal geography, could anticipate these movements and set up ambush points where the whales would be channeled through narrow passages. By the late Viking Age, gray whale populations were already showing signs of depletion in areas of heaviest Norse settlement. The combination of increased whaling efficiency and the species' low reproductive rate, females typically give birth to just one calf every 2 years, set the stage for their eventual disappearance from Atlantic waters. But while Vikings battled colossal whales at sea, their struggles didn't end once they reached dry land. The forests of Britain were home to predators just as fierce and far less predictable. In the late 8th century, when Viking longships first landed on the shores of Britain and Ireland, they entered territories where another formidable predator had long reigned supreme, the British wolf. These wolves, genetically distinct from their Scandinavian cousins, had dominated the British Isles for thousands of years, before Norse settlers arrived to carve out new kingdoms. Standing taller than the Honshu wolf of Japan, but smaller than modern timber wolves, British wolves typically reached heights of 70 to 85 cm or 28 to 33 inches at the shoulder and weighed between 30 to 45 kilo or 66 to 99 lb. Their thick, often gray-brown coats were adapted to the damp conditions of the British Isles, with distinctive white markings frequently appearing on their chests, a feature noted in several Viking-era daons. When Vikings first raided Lindisfarne in 793 CE, wolves remained common throughout Britain and Ireland, with packs controlling territories from the Scottish Highlands. I've always been fascinated by the Vikings' complex relationship with the natural world, especially the animals they encountered as they expanded their reach. Wolves, for instance, were both a threat and an opportunity. I can only imagine the mix of fear and respect these Norse settlers felt when they first heard those howls echoing through the forests of southern England. Archaeological digs on Viking settlements in the Hebrides and Northern Isles have turned up wolf bones bearing cut marks, clear signs that the newcomers quickly started hunting them. For Vikings establishing permanent colonies in the British Isles, wolves were natural enemies because of the threat they posed to livestock, especially sheep, which were so important to the Norse economy in places like the Orkneys and Hebrides. Yet, Viking warriors also respected the predator's hunting skills and pack coordination, qualities they themselves valued in battle. This complex relationship shows up in Norse place names still scattered across former Viking territories in Britain. Places like Olvadale, Wolf Valley in Cumbria, and Wolf Hill in Perthshire all mark areas where Norse settlers often crossed paths with these predators. Several Viking-era runestones discovered in northern England show wolf hunts, hinting that these dangerous pursuits held ceremonial meaning for warriors proving their strength in new lands. British wolves even crept into Viking folklore. As Norse settlers mixed with local populations, they adopted and reshaped Celtic wolf myths into their own traditions. The link between wolf and warrior grew stronger, with berserkers sometimes described wearing wolf pelts instead of bear skins. Ultimately, it wasn't the Vikings who sealed the fate of British wolves, but their descendants. As Norse settlements evolved into medieval kingdoms, the systematic extermination of wolves became official policy. The process actually started during the Viking Age, but it sped up afterward. The last wolves in England disappeared during the 15th century, and Scotland's final wolves held on until the 17th century. Ireland's last wolf was reportedly killed in 1786, marking the end of a predator lineage that had witnessed everything from the first Celtic settlers to the Viking invasions and beyond. Another animal the Vikings encountered felt like something from a more ancient time: the Atlantic and Baltic sturgeons. These armored leviathans lurked beneath the rivers and coastal waters of northern Europe. Living fossils, mostly unchanged for over 200 million years, they once thrived in the waterways of Viking territories, but have since vanished from much of their historical range. The Baltic sturgeon could grow to truly massive sizes, with females reaching up to 3 meters or 10 feet in length and weighing over 300 kilograms, or 660 pounds. Their prehistoric look, with bony plates called scutes arranged in 5 rows along their bodies instead of scales, made them unmistakable among European fish. Most noticeable was their long armor-plated snout with a vacuum-like mouth underneath, perfectly designed for sucking up mollusks and crustaceans from river and sea floors. Their huge size meant that catching one was a big deal, important enough to be included in regional sagas. Several Norse tales mention heroes who wrestled these armored river dragons. Archaeological finds from Viking settlements include specialized sturgeon spears with detachable heads, designed to pierce the fish's armored exterior, which tells you how important these catches were to Viking fishermen. Beyond their meat, sturgeons offered many valuable resources. Their swim bladders were processed into isinglass, used for clarifying beer and wine, and also for making a strong adhesive. Their cartilaginous skeletons, when boiled, produced a gelatin used in Viking medicine for joint problems. Most prized of all was sturgeon roe, caviar, which became a delicacy reserved for jarls and kings. By the late Viking Age, sturgeon populations were already declining in heavily settled areas. Their slow reproduction rate, with females maturing at 15 to 20 years, made them vulnerable to overfishing. Predictable spawning runs and their habit of basking near the surface made them easy targets. In the medieval period, dams blocked spawning routes, and pollution made things even worse. By the 18th century, Baltic sturgeon had become so rare that Scandinavian monarchs claimed them as royal property, a protection that sadly came too late to save them. But as Vikings turned their sights inland, the armored giants of the rivers were replaced by shaggy titans of the forest. The European bison and its forest-dwelling cousin, the wisent. Unlike the American bison we know today, these European relatives were specifically adapted to the dense mixed forest that once covered much of northern and eastern Europe. Standing up to 1.9 meters or 6.2 feet at the shoulder and weighing over 900 kilograms or 2,000 pounds, the European bison was the heaviest land animal in Europe during the Viking Age. Bulls developed massive shoulder humps, covered with shaggy, dark brown fur that contrasted with the lighter coat on their lower bodies. Their distinctive curved horns, though shorter than those of the aurochs, were just as dangerous when the animal charged. Unlike grassland bison, these woodland giants could move between trees with surprising agility, using their powerful bodies to create paths through the densest undergrowth. These natural trails, maintained over generations, became known to Vikings as bison roads, reliable routes through otherwise impenetrable forest that human travelers would follow. For Viking communities pushing into new territories, these massive herbivores represented both opportunity and challenge. A successful bison hunt could provide meat for an entire village for weeks, along with hides thick enough to stop arrows, making them prized for shields and winter clothing. The distinctive hump contained concentrated fat reserves that produced high-quality oil for lamps and waterproofing. However, hunting these forest behemoths was extraordinarily dangerous. Unlike deer or smaller game, wounded bison would typically, the Viking sagas tell grim tales of entire hunting parties wiped out by enraged bulls. These weren't ordinary cattle, but the mighty European bison, capable of reaching speeds of 40 kilometers an hour, even through dense woodland. Their sheer size and power made them a formidable foe. It's sobering to think that by the late Viking Age, these bison were already in decline across much of their former range. The press of intensive hunting, coupled with the relentless clearing of forests for agriculture, pushed these magnificent animals into increasingly isolated pockets. Unlike the aurochs, the European bison narrowly escaped complete extinction. A small population clung to existence in the Białowieża forest between Poland and Belarus. Today, around 7,000 descendants still live there, a living link to the forest giants that Vikings once hunted. It's a stark reminder that the world the Vikings knew was changing even as they sailed, hunted, and settled. The creatures that had defined their landscapes were already fading, pushed toward extinction by the very same human expansion and climate shifts that, ironically, fueled the Viking Age itself.